Welcome back, Ultrawide fans. Scott here, and today we're going to be testing the RTX 4070 Ti's Raster performance across 10 games to see which of our ultrawide and super ultrawide resolutions this thing can provide great play experiences for. The specific card we're testing today is this Zotac Gaming Trinity. I will be highlighting some of the strengths and some of the concerns that I have about the RTX 4070 Ti. All testing will be done on my test bench featuring an AMD R7 5800X 3D and 32 gigabytes of 3200Hz CL14 memory, running on Windows 11 and using the latest Nvidia drivers. Now, let's get into those benchmarks. Starting off, we have the stealth action game Assassin's Creed Valhalla, played at its ultra high preset. At the 1440p ultra-wide resolution, we see the 4070 Ti deliver high refresh rates of 98 FPS, while our 1600p ultra-wide and our super ultra-wide slip into smooth refresh rates of 87 and 76 FPS respectively, and only our 4K ultra-wide misses the 60 FPS threshold, coming in shy by just 1 FPS. The 1% low situation is still looking good for our 1440p ultra-wide, with a smooth 65 FPS. With both the 1600p and the super ultra-wide dropping below 60, they are still fine with 1% lows on the acceptable range at 59 and 52 FPS. Only the 4K ultrawide suffers and begs for some upscaling to save its play experience, delivering an unacceptable 42 FPS, 1% low. AC Valhalla tends to have worse 1% low deviation than most games, and we see that trend continue with the 4070 Ti delivering 32% difference between the average and the 1% low. Otherwise, it's providing a nice play experience at our more modest resolutions. Next up, we have the wacky gunslingers of Borderlands 3 running at its badass preset. At our 1440p ultra-wide resolution, we see the 4070 Ti delivering some more high refresh rates, clearing the 100Hz mark, delivering a 101 FPS. Again, we see both the 1600p ultra-wide and the 1440p super ultra-wide coming in the smooth range, delivering 86 and 73 FPS respectively. The 4K ultra-wide is staying in the acceptable range, with frame rates of 53 FPS. The 1% lows are where we see things looking much better. In this game with 1440p and 1600p ultra-wides, as well as our super ultra-wide resolution now delivering smooth frame rates of 81, 72, and 60 FPS respectively. Sadly, our 4K ultra-wide is stuck with unacceptable 1% lows of 41 FPS, still in need of some upscaling help. Borderlands 3 performance looks a lot like AC Valhalla, just with much better 1% lows, with only a 19% difference between the average and the 1% low. For our racing fans, we have Forza Horizon 5, running at its extreme preset. Here we see both our 1440p and 1600p ultra-wide delivering high refresh rates of 102 and 94 FPS respectively, while our super wide and even our 4K ultra-wide are delivering smooth refresh rates of 86 and 74 FPS. Moving to our 1% low results, we see a pleasing sight. 4070 Ti manages to get high refresh rates on the 1440p ultra-wide, and everything else, even the 4K ultra-wide, is staying above 60, with the 1600p ultra-wide getting 83 FPS, the super ultra-wide getting 76 FPS, and the 4K ultra-wide getting 66 smooth frames. The 4070 Ti delivers a great play experience at every resolution in Forza Horizon 5, with some tight 1% lows with only a 12% drop from the average. Next up, we have our newest game on the list, Forspoken, played at its ultra-high preset with ray tracing and FSR turned off. Here we see why Forspoken tries to turn FSR on by default. This is the first and only game in our lineup where the 4070 Ti fails to deliver smooth gameplay at any resolution, with the 1440p ultra-wide delivering 58 FPS, the 1600p ultra-wide 50 FPS, and the 1440p super ultra-wide 45 FPS. With the 4K ultra-wide falling into unacceptable territory with a 35 FPS average. Here we unfortunately see the 4070 Ti's low VRAM start to affect image quality at our super ultra-wide and 4K ultra-wide resolutions. When we look at the 1% lows, we see that no resolution manages to stay at acceptable frame rates, with our 1440p ultra-wide, 1600p ultra-wide, and 1440p super ultra-wide resolutions getting 43, 37, and 36 FPS respectively, making upscaling necessary for a good play experience. The 4K ultra-wide resolution drops down to 28 FPS into unplayable territory, where you will need to do more than just turn up upscaling to get a good play experience. Not only does our first 2023 game not manage to get 60 FPS, we see our first big concern with this card rear its ugly head. the 12GB VRAM. It's just not enough for the higher resolutions, and the game picks dumping the textures rather than constantly trying to swap them in and out and affect frame rate performance. Using a 4090 at 4K Ultrawide, we see it using 15.5GB of memory, nearly a third more memory than the 4070 Ti has. Even at 1440p Ultrawide resolution, the 4090 sees 12.2GB of video memory usage. This will be a long-term concern for this card, for anyone playing at higher resolutions. Next up, we'll be rendering robot dinos in Horizon Zero Dawn, played at its ultimate quality preset. Here we see the RTX 4070 Ti delivering high refresh rate gameplay at 3 of our 4 resolutions, with the 1440p Ultrawide getting 115 FPS, the 1600p Ultrawide 93 FPS, and thanks to the centrally detailed anomaly, the Super Ultrawide actually outperforms the 600p Ultrawide with a 101 FPS average. Once again, we see the 4070 Ti's memory exceeded at the 4K Ultrawide resolution, and we see the results come crashing down to only 54 FPS, to provide only an acceptable frame rate. For 1% lows, we see our 3 lower resolutions provide smooth refresh rates of 81, 65, and 63 FPS respectively. The 4K Ultrawide is way down in unacceptable frame rates of 40 FPS. The average frame rate here for our 3 lower resolutions is high and enjoyable, but while our 1% lows are a bit looser than we would like to see, the Super Ultrawide has even worse frame deviation than the 21:9 resolutions, with a whopping 37% drop from its average, making both our higher resolutions not as good a play experience as we'd like to see. Jumping into the Marvel Universe with Guardians of the Galaxy played at its Ultra preset, we see the 4070 Ti deliver some very compelling frame rates down the stack. Both our 1440p and 1600p Ultrawides are in very high refresh rate territory, with frame rates of 154 and 133 FPS. The Super Ultrawide achieves high refresh rates of 113 FPS, and even the 4K Ultrawide is getting a smooth 83 FPS. The 1% lows are looking equally rosy with high refresh rates for the 3 lower resolutions of 117, 103, and 90 FPS, respectively. And the 4K Ultrawide resolution stays in smooth at 66 FPS for the cherry on top of this performance sundae. With the high refresh rate gameplay and better 1% lows than we see in most games, the 4070 Ti is really looking good here. Next up, representing our multiplayer games, we have Rainbow Six Extraction played at its Ultra preset with resolution quality set to fixed 100%. Again, we are seeing some more great performance out of our 4070 Ti. Now we are seeing very high refresh rates for our 3 lower resolutions of 165, 140, and 121 FPS respectively, with the 4K getting a smooth 85 FPS. The 1% lows have a good showing as well, with the 1440p Ultrawide staying at very high refresh rates at 122 FPS, while both the 1600p Ultrawide and the Super Ultrawide deliver high refresh rates of 103 and 92 FPS. The 4K Ultrawide manages to stay smooth at 63 FPS. With very high refresh rates and a perfectly fine 25% difference between the average and the 1% lows, the 4070 Ti is providing every user with a great experience. We uncover the treasure of high frame rates with Laura in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, played on its highest preset. Starting off, we see the 4070 Ti delivering very high refresh rates for our 1440p Ultrawide resolution of 128 FPS, and high refresh rates for both our 1600p Ultrawide and the Super Ultrawide of 110 and 95 FPS respectively, and our 4K Ultrawide is keeping it smooth at 67 FPS. Our 1% lows are still looking good with high refresh rates for our 1440p and 1600p Ultrawides of 104 and 91 FPS, and smoother refresh rates for our Super Ultrawide of 81 FPS, and even our 4K Ultrawide manages to hang on by the tips of its fingers with a 60 FPS 1% low. Shadow of the Tomb Raider runs very well on the 4070 Ti across the board, with its tight 1% lows ranging from 19 to just 11% lower than average. Cyberpunk 2077 is here to test the 4070 Ti's mettle, played at its Ultra preset with FSR off. At 1440p and 1600p Ultrawide, we are still seeing smooth frame rates from the 4070 Ti of 73 and 61 FPS, though our Super Ultrawide manages to drop to acceptable frame rates of 52 FPS for only the second time. But our 4K Ultrawide manages the trick of delivering the slowest average frame rate of 34 FPS, putting it well down in unacceptable range. No 1% low manages to clear 60, with both the 1440p and 1600p ultrawides coming in with acceptable 1% lows of 57 and 49 FPS. The Super Ultrawide is down in unacceptable frame rates for its 1% low of 43 FPS, requiring the use of upscaling for a good play experience, and the 4K Ultrawide is all the way down in unplayable range, with a 29 FPS 1% low, demanding more than just standard upscaling to see great frame rates. Cyberpunk 2077 runs just fine at 1440p and 1600p ultrawide, even without upscaling, but as the resolution goes up it starts to take a beating, with huge drops at 4K ultrawide as its memory nears its limit. And our last game of the roundup is for our strategy buffs. It's Total War Warhammer III, another demanding title played on its Ultra preset using the battle simulation. We see a similar performance stack up to Cyberpunk, with both the 1440p and 1600p ultrawides delivering smooth frame rates of 75 and 65 FPS, and the Super Ultrawide with an acceptable frame rates of 55 FPS, and the 4K Ultrawide once again down in unacceptable territory at 41 FPS. In Warhammer we see some very tight 1% lows, with the 1440p Ultrawide able to continue delivering smooth frame rates of 66 FPS. Our 1600p Ultrawide and Super Ultrawide are both delivering acceptable frame rates of 57 and 51 FPS. And even a 4K Ultrawide doesn't drop down a tier, with its 1% low still in unacceptable frame rates at 63 FPS. In Total War Warhammer III, the RTX 4070 Ti delivers a playable frame rate for 3 out of the 4 resolutions, with the super tight 1% lows. In the slower pace of this game, even the 1440p Super Ultrawide is a good play experience with its frame rate in acceptable range, which is good because this game doesn't support any AI upscaling at all, but that also means that the 4K Ultrawide is left out in the cold unless you start dropping settings. Let's see how the 4070 Ti stacks up at each resolution, so that we can see which Ultrawide users should be considering the 4070 Ti as their next card. First, let's consider the 1440p Ultrawide resolution. We see the 4070 Ti getting 107 FPS high refresh rate average and a smooth 82 FPS 1% low, for it should be a great play experience. When looking at the individual game level, we see 3 games at very high refresh rate averages, 4 with high refresh rate averages, 2 with smooth refresh rates, and a single game that just dips into acceptable territory. For the 1% lows, we see 1 game hit very high refresh rates, 3 that manage high refresh rates, 4 with smooth refresh rates, and 1 with acceptable, and 1 with unacceptable refresh rates. With 9 out of the 10 games providing a good to great play experience, and 1 that is subpar but can be easily propped up by AI upscaling, I can confidently say that the 4070 Ti is easily a suitable performance level for the 1440p Ultrawide resolution, without being overkill. Moving to the 1600p Ultrawide resolution, we see the 4070 Ti delivering a high refresh rate average of 92 FPS, and a smooth 1% low of 72. When we look at the individual game level, we see 2 games at very high refresh rates, 3 with high refresh rates, 4 with smooth refresh rates, and still only 1 game with an acceptable refresh rate. And for the 1% lows, we see 3 that manage high refresh rates, 3 with smooth refresh rates, 3 with acceptable refresh rates, and 1 with an unacceptable refresh rate. With again 9 out of the 10 games providing good to very good gameplay experience, and with the 1 that is subpar, able to be easily propped up by AI upscaling, I can confidently say that the 4070 Ti delivers a suitable performance level for the 1600p Ultrawide resolution. Next up we have the 1440p Super Ultrawide resolution. We are seeing a smooth 84 FPS for the average and a still smooth 64 FPS for the 1% low. When we look at the individual game level, we see 1 game hanging on to very high refresh rates, 3 games at high refresh rates, 3 with smooth refresh rates, and 3 with acceptable refresh rates. And looking at the 1% lows, we see only 2 games with high refresh rates, 4 with smooth refresh rates, 2 with acceptable, and 2 with unacceptable refresh rates. With nearly 1/3 of the games delivering subpar performance, and the looming specter of running out of video memory as games get more and more demanding, I can't recommend the 4070 Ti for the 1440p Super Ultrawide user. If it had more video memory, I could give it a pass, as just okay for this resolution, but as it is, I think you need to look at another card. Lastly, we have our 4K Ultrawide, which just falls out of smooth gameplay into acceptable for its average at 59 FPS, with a 1% low also an acceptable of 47 FPS, which may make it seem like you could get away with using the 4070 Ti at this resolution, but the reality is the low VRAM is already costing you big at this resolution. When we look at the individual game level, we see no game even makes it to high refresh rates, with 4 games getting smooth refresh rates, 3 acceptable, and 3 unacceptable average refresh rates. And with the 1% lows, we see 4 with smooth refresh rates, 4 with unacceptable refresh rates, and 2 with unplayable refresh rates, with over half the games coming in below 60 and 3 games already suffering from memory constraints. You should steer clear of the RTX 4070 Ti for this resolution and find something that is at least the minimum, has more VRAM, but ideally a fair deal more horsepower as well. The RTX 4070 Ti delivers good average refresh rates, as well as 1% lows, for our 1440p and 1600p Ultrawide, as well as our 1440p Super Ultrawide. Even our 4K Ultrawide manages to stay completely into acceptable refresh range. But that doesn't mean that this card is suitable for all those resolutions. Its main Achilles heel is its 12GB of VRAM, which is already causing it to lose texture detail in Forspoken at 2 of our resolutions. And in Cyberpunk, we're seeing worse than expected 4K Ultrawide performance. I'd only get the 4070 Ti if I was running a 1600p Ultrawide or lower resolution and wasn't planning on upgrading to a higher resolution monitor in the near future. As we've seen so far this year, all the games coming out targeting next-gen hardware only are notoriously hard to run, and I don't expect that to change in the rest of the year. The MSRP of the 4070 Ti makes it one of the better price performance deals of this generation, though I was only able to find one card at MSRP, the one that I reviewed in this video, which you can find in the link in the description below, which is a bit surprising considering all the Reddit posts I see with stacks and stacks of 4070 Ti sitting on shelves. But the next cheapest card was $40 over, which, while not a large price increase, does change the price performance evaluation between it and its nearest competitor, which doesn't have the same memory constraints that the 4070 Ti does. If you just bought one of the new Alienware OLED Ultrawides and you plan on running that thing until all the pixels burn out, then the 4070 Ti is going to be a solid performer for you. But if you're lusting after that new 57-inch Neo G9 and are planning on just using frame generation to get the frame rate you want, well, I would really consider using a card that has higher video memory, because it's not going to work out as well as you think it would. If you'd like to ensure that there are more graphics cards showing up on this channel as soon as they are launched, please subscribe to help us get monetized so I can afford to buy them day one. You can also support this channel by using the affiliate links in the description below to buy any of the graphics cards we talked about today. I'm Scott, and thank you for watching, and have a great day.